All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 314 of the Health Detective Podcast. We have a special guest today, and if anyone listens regularly, they're like, dude, this guy calls everyone a special guest. That's because it's true. They're all special in their own ways. But this one is particularly unique. These are some of my favorite podcasts to do. So our guest is someone who I actually talked to on the phone when they were looking into FDN. We got him enrolled in the course, and now we're going full circle. She is a badass entrepreneur herself, so we'll have multiple topics to touch on today. Before we get to that, one quick announcement. If this is on the audio, you can kind of skip the next minute. If you are live or watching recently after it came out on YouTube, it is relevant to you. We have our 5 and 5 workshop coming up on March 18th. If you're like, what's a 5 and 5 workshop? That's where we go live for 5 days straight with you guys. We bring on clinical advisors, course mentors. I'll kind of just be doing like emceeing, hosting style stuff for the 5 days. And we're walking you through a real life lab example or client example with the labs. We're going over the markers. We're showing you how FDNs work with very sick people. And so that you can get one of two things out of this, potentially both. At the very least, you would get tips for your own practice. If you're a health coach or functional practitioner, there is no way you won't learn something from this. Or if you are considering the FDN course already, I consider this one of the best resources to go through first, because if you love it, you're going to love FDN. If you don't resonate with it, then you just saved yourself a bunch of time and heartache because you probably would not love FDN. So the link for that is fdntraining.com/5 in 5 March 2024. I'll actually add that here to our stuff. That's fdntraining.com/5 in 5 March 2024. And I will share that here. All right, now for today's topic and today's guest, I have Marja Chow with me. Marja Chow, I got to say that a little better. We just practiced too before I got on. She is a registered holistic nutritionist, FDN practitioner, personal trainer, bodybuilder, and a proud dog mom of two, or dog mom of two. There we go. She is also the creator of Lab Fit Nutrition that helps high-performing entrepreneurs and business owners reduce burnout, optimize health, and this is all by using functional lab testing and biohacking. But that is not all. She is also the creator of the Fat-Fueled Female Method, and this signature program empowers women to achieve sustainable weight loss by embracing a low-carb, high-fat lifestyle. Her journey into the ketogenic space began in 2016, where she discovered the transformative power of a high-fat diet. By adopting this lifestyle, she not only stabilized her weight, but also broke free from the vicious cycle of yo-yo dieting, creating a healthy relationship with food for the first time in her adult life. Welcome to the show, my friend. Thank you for my long intro there.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, cool. So we'll get right into this. You know how I like to start the show. It's really with the person's story and diving into maybe what they were experiencing. So this is kind of cool because I don't remember your entire story from when we talked. This was back in almost May, I think, of 2023 or even earlier. So when did your health symptoms start and what did they look like? And if I remember correctly, was this associated with the weightlifting and bodybuilding?
Yeah, so basically, as a teenager, I was like a chronic dieter. I was, always training. I would train like twice a day. I would eat like 1,000 calories. And that was my story from like 13 to like 19. And then I went to nutrition school in my early 20s and I'm like, okay, I can't continue like eating 1,200 calories a day, overtraining, under eating. So then going to nutrition school, I discovered, wow, food is really powerful. Food is medicine, medicine is food. And I was really able to heal my relationship with food and have that education about how food can support multiple systems in the body. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do bodybuilding. So when I did bodybuilding, it kind of triggered all of that like disordered eating to come back because you're weighing your food, you're measuring your food, you're really doing everything just for like a vanity, right? It's like how we're bodybuilding. The thing about it is there's not a clear winner. It's not like what was the soccer score? It was 5-4. It was like based on the judges and based on opinions. So from bodybuilding, it triggered all of this disordered eating to come back, body dysmorphia. And that's when I was working full time as a personal trainer. So it was so hard because I had I had this big secret, and I had a lot of shame because all these people are coming to me to get them healthy, to, get them fit, to get them on these healthy meal plans, but I was like struggle city with all this stuff internally. So I quit bodybuilding, and that's when I started keto. It's like everything I learned in college, everything I learned in nutrition school, everything I learned in bodybuilding was like carbs, carbs, carbs. It was like eat your carbs and like really, really low fat. Like I know when I was competing, I would eat 30 grams of fat a day, the
Wow.
entire day. And that's like what I put in my bulletproof coffee, right? Butter and MCT. So I'm like, that was my entire day of what I would consume. So from bodybuilding, I had, all this disordered eating came back, and I had terrible skin. Like my body looked amazing, but my face, not so much.
Mhm.
I had like breakouts. I looked gaunt, and I had lost my period for 6 months
Mm.
because of no fat, right? So I quit bodybuilding and I dove into keto in 2016 against like everything I learned in school, everything I practiced, everything I preached. And I'm just like, I'm just going to surrender and go into it. And full disclosure, it took me 6 months to figure out how it worked for my body, because I kind of went down the pathway of like following really like rigid keto rules, like 25 grams of fat a day. And us as females, we have very different hormones than men, right? So we have to cycle carbs in a different way. So to make a long story short, that's how I really created my signature program, the Fat Fueled Female Method. Both of my programs actually were created selfishly because of what I needed. I feel
Mhm.
like a lot of practitioners, their origin story becomes what they do, and um, how their coaching packages or what their signature programs consist of, because they wish they had something like that when they were going through their journey.
100%. I mean, it's a classic turning your pain into passion story. What's also unfortunately very classic about this is and I'm a guy. I cannot believe how many women clients we've attracted into our practice with an almost identical story, at least up to this part. They are some of the most discipline driven people you'll ever meet in general. And then they take it so far that they actually start to receive these health symptoms as a result of this. And they think, oh, it's not enough. I just need to push harder. It's like, whoa. And it's like the symptoms, you can watch them happen and you can predict what's going to happen next half the time. So, what I wanted to dissect about the story just a little further is when you were experiencing these things like the skin issues or, oh my gosh, losing your period and stuff for 6 months, what was the thought around that? Like, I'm assuming you knew it wasn't normal, but like, it's not like you were into the functional medicine and deeply holistic at that time. So I'm always curious, like, what is the perception of a woman going through this that has these huge goals for herself, but then at the same time, you're like noticing, hey, this isn't working. This is actually getting pretty scary.
Yeah, it's kind of like those two voices inside your head. You're like, I know I'm not healthy externally, like what's showing up, but I look really good in a bikini.
Mm.
So it's like there's a really hard disconnect. And it's also like mental toughness, like you push through the symptoms. And I think mental toughness is a really important skill to have. But at the same accord, like the clients I work with, like the high performing entrepreneurs, it's like we push through that and we ignore our symptoms. And we think that because I felt this way for X amount of time, that it's just normal. And I always like to say, symptoms are common. They are not normal. It's not normal to not have your period. It's not normal to wake up and have to pull yourself out of bed, right?
Mhm. I loved your description before when you said like, hey, bodybuilding doesn't have a score in the same way that a soccer game does. Obviously,
Mhm.
someone wins, Olympia or whatever, but up until then, you really don't know, are you winning, are you losing, whatever. So it kind of leads you to being inclined to push harder and harder. I think something very conceptually similar happens in this realm of entrepreneurship and the pushing that we do because you and I connected like right away. We're both like, all right, type A crazy people. The phone call was so high energy. We were
Yeah.
like, bam, bam, bam. But I think what happens is there's no rule book to that either. I don't always know still to this day. I'm like, am I pushing too hard or am I not pushing hard enough? Like, where does the line get drawn between I just need to give a little more effort today? Because that's a very real thing that many people
Mhm.
struggle with is that they don't give enough effort. And then at the same time, when am I pushing too hard to the point that it's at the detriment of my own health? And perhaps we can, explore that a bit later, or maybe you already have some insights for that now, because this is still a work in progress for me, quite frankly. Like, I'd love to know a better place to stop. So, just curious, maybe it's not perfected by now, but like,
Mhm.
in your world now, knowing what you know, how do you tell when you are just actually like getting unwell because you've pushed too hard versus, hey, I'm just being a little lazy today and I need to grind harder? How do you draw that line?
I think for me, what really changed everything was joining FDN and running the functional labs because I had data. So basically, when it was, I learned it like I wish I had learned about FDN like 10 years ago. It would have completely changed my life. I only learned about FDN, I think, in 2022, and it was between a 6-month business mastermind or FDN. And I'm like, and they're around the same price. I'm like, I'm going to do the business mastermind. I'll circle back to FDN. So the thing is, when I was in that business mastermind, it was 6 months, it was intense, and there was a lot of revenue goals. There was a lot of, moving parts and things that I wanted to create for myself and my business. And in doing that, I really burnt the candle really, really, really hard on both ends. And I remember we had a meetup in New York and I had a panic attack. I'm like, how am I going to get on this plane? I feel so burnt out. I have to meet all these entrepreneurs that are so successful. I was having imposter syndrome. And it was because I was depleting the crap out of myself. I wasn't sleeping properly. I was thinking about strategy. I was trying to hire people. It was just like I was in my own stuff and not even realizing it. So then when I joined FDN and I got my labs back, I was like, okay, well, you're in the exhaustive phase.
Wow.
You have like no cortisol. Your gut, there's like, with the GI map, like the commensal bacteria. I always say those are like the trees in the forest. I'm like, I had baby trees. And then the phylobacteria, the family, I'm like, I explain those as like the forest itself. And my forest was burnt down. So like there
Mm.
was so much dysfunction going on inside my body. And I was still pushing it through the workouts, like doing the hit workouts, doing the heavy days. And I was feeling tired, but it was my norm. I'm like, whatever, man, no pain, no gain, get through it. Stop being lazy. It's like that mental toughness. But when I got that lab data, it gave me permission to slow down. And I think that's what is a really big, really big part in my business with the clients I work with because they're such go-getters. They're successful. Entrepreneurs think and move differently, right? We're always creating, we're always thinking, we're always testing. We're not sure if things are going to work. There's a lot of uncertainty, but that's what makes it exciting.
Mhm.
So the entrepreneurs I work with, they just are in this trajectory of go, 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 go. And then when I say, hey, these are your labs, okay? Like labs don't lie. This is what's going on inside your body. It actually gives them permission that, hey, I really need to slow down before I speed up. And I say, if you give me, because I work with clients for at least 4 months, if you give me 4 months out of your life and we bring your body, we rebalance systems, we bring up your vital reserve, what I'm going to teach you, what I'm going to preach to you, how you're going to understand how your body works are things that you're going to be able to implement for the rest of your life. So just give me that 4 months and let's slow things down so that we can speed things up in the future.
I think that's spot on because the labs are validating for a variety of people for a variety of different reasons. But when you said that, it like clicked for me. I'm like, oh, duh, that's exactly what happened with myself, especially with the hormonal results, because it's truly validating to see no one made this up, Ev. This isn't an excuse. This is actually what your labs are showing. Because I was in California at the time finding FDN. And I don't tell this part of the story ever. I always say I went to California and I say we didn't have money, but I never said, okay, how did we get money? Well, we just did crazy amounts of deliveries. We were doing Postmates. It wasn't big at the time. It's like DoorDash. I don't know if some people don't know it. And the thing was, if you went out past 12 a.m. since they were new, every order was 1.5x. So every day, 7 days a week to make it out in California, I went out from 5 p.m. till about 5 a.m. or 4 a.m., depending if it was like a weekday or not, just delivering food, running upstairs, like doing all this crap. And I was already sick most of my life, remember. This is not like I was coming from a fresh bill of health. I had 7 different diagnosed conditions just a couple years before and still 50% of the symptoms of those things. And so now I'm doing this. And the thing that scared me, it was the time that I went to my buddy and I said, yo, we need to go home. I was getting sick, colds, pink eye, weird stuff that I didn't normally get. But the thing that scared me the most, it was the first delivery of the night. And I was, walking up like a 3-story staircase. That was it. And you know how like you see stars sometimes if you got up too fast or like you didn't get enough sleep? Not that. I mean, legitimately distorted vision, just head spinning, whatever, like to the point where I'm like, okay, Like it wasn't like the black spots, like when you stand up too fast. It was like
Right.
my vision is off. Like something is wrong right now. And I just remember I went home that night. I'm like, yo, okay, we've stayed our welcome. Like we went for California for the winter. I found FDN. It's time to go fix this stuff. And I felt lazy. I'm like, oh, dude, I need to work harder because I'm listening to self-help people all day long. Tony Robbins is screaming in my ear. David Goggins is telling me, I'm like, you know what? And I'm
Yeah.
like, crap, man. Like, I gotta go. And then I see these hormone results. I'm like, dude, you're same thing as you. I'm in the exhaustive phase. It's not that you need to push harder. You need to back the hell off so that you can push efficiently. Because you end up
Yes.
being like a hamster on the wheel when you're doing this stuff. You're pushing all right, but you're doing it with brain fog. Your retention isn't the same. Your attitude's not the same. You're actually working inefficiently, which is like, that's a stab in the heart for an entrepreneur, right? We don't want to be inefficient.
Totally.
So we'll touch on that definitely more in this episode, but I want to go back to your story, kind of make a logical progression here. So you get introduced to this stuff, but then what's interesting to me, because I didn't know this until you just told me, is that you went through FDN very recently. This is in the last year, and you still had hormone stuff that was in the exhaustive phase. So you were quite educated, though, between starting FDN and when all this originally happened.
Mhm.
So what were some of the things that you had tried that moved the needle in the right direction? Because obviously it moved it in the right direction enough that you thought that you were good to go, kind of, at least to some degree. So what were some of the things that did work initially?
I think it really was diet, right? Like diet is foundational. You know, the dress pillars, 5 pillars of health: diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. I'm a little bit biased and I say diet. If you think of a 5-legged table, diet's in the center. Diet is paramount. Diet bleeds into those other 4 pillars, right? Like we have to dial in the nutrition. So for me, it was I eat, really well. I have for a really long time. So I think that was really my saving grace. I think bringing it back to just 6 months of business mastermind it was an intense program. Like we're doing 3 live calls a week. We are, filling out our progress every single week. We're wanting to have certain amount of sales calls booked. So just the stress of that, I think, tipped the scale. And I think I was doing okay until that, to be honest.
Okay, and you have an insane list of credentials. I remember we added each other on LinkedIn recently. I was like, oh my gosh, it's even more than I thought. This is nuts. So then FDN originally, and I'm sorry if this was said when you were talking about why you were looking into it, but I don't fully recall. Were you originally looking at this as a way to just, hey, continue this path of keeping learning? I want to add one more tool in the huge tool belt I have for clients. Like, were you actually looking at this for yourself originally, or did that just end up being an added bonus?
I think it was a bit of both. When I think I spoke to you, you're like, "Yeah, you get to run all these labs on yourself." I'm like, "Amazing." That was a selling point. I think for me also working with people for over 10 years, it's like I've just been addressing the symptoms. And I know that, to really get to more of the root and understand what's going on, I felt like it was the missing link in my business. Like I can only help you so much with diet. I can only help you so much with coaching you up and mindset work. But like if you have a gut infection, if your hormones are imbalanced, if your minerals are in the toilet, like I like to say to clients, like your body doesn't shut off. There is no off switch.
Mhm.
That is, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year that is affecting you externally, whether you realize it or not. And if we do nothing, we know nothing changes, right? Like it's not like if you do nothing, you stay the same. No, we get progressively worse, right? So I feel like that was the missing link in my business is actually having that data for clients. And again, for me, having that data for myself was my saving grace because I don't think if I joined, I knew I was going to join FDN. It just
Mhm.
was a matter of when.
Yeah,
But if I had waited, say, another 6 months or another year, I don't know where my hormones and where my health would be
sure.
because I was working just way too hard. I was grinding way too hard.
Yeah, well, and you're being humble too, because I know it was a tool for your business, but this is someone, I hope I could say this because it's the ultimate compliment. This is someone who told me in confidence before FDN. I mean, this woman already had a 6-figure business, guys, and she did that from working her ass off and serving people at a super high level. It's not like you're just taking money from people, you're killing yourself to go serve these people at a high level. So I actually think there's a really unique aspect here because only people that are business inclined are even going to click on a title like this eventually, right? So it's probably appropriate to talk more about that stuff. I want to ask this question, and then we'll talk about specifically how you serve entrepreneurs at a high level now with these labs. But I want to focus on you first and the business. How did adding this in help someone like you that in every sense of the word, like on paper, financially, this is a very successful business. You have a ton of other credentials. How was this a missing link for someone like you? Because I think so many people come to FDN and they might be starting business for the first time, which is great. We have the resources for that. But I think it's particularly cool. And I get very excited. I said this to you on the phone because I always say this to people. I'm like, if you've already had success with coaching before doing this, and you add this in, oh my gosh, I mean, sky's the limit. So
Mhm.
I'm very curious, like, how has this helped? Has it made it so that you can, maybe provide higher value to people so they're happier, but you can charge more and work less and rest a little bit? Like, tell us about the benefits.
Yeah, I like I said, I think it's a game changer for people. I feel like even when I think back to my program, the Fat Fueled Female Method, I had a couple of clients who were on the fence with joining because I was running it like an evergreen program for a year. And they just were like, I think I could kind of like figure this out on my own. But then when they came in, they understand like my frameworks and like I teach a lot in that program. So I think people have that idea that there's so much information. Like we're in a day and age where you can go on YouTube and learn so much. There's podcasts, there's books, right? That people feel like, hey, I can kind of learn the nutrition and the health stuff on my own. With the labs, like you can't learn the labs on your own. You know what I mean? So I feel like that kind of set me apart because people are more interested because it's very individualized to them, right? Your lab data is not like my lab data and vice versa. So I think, again, it's that game changer for people. And especially, I've been really working with women for the last 5 years. And recently, most of my clientele actually, excuse me, is men. I don't know why a lot of successful, I guess, men entrepreneurs, not to say that there's not women, because hello, I'm one, but I'm
Yeah,
saying
maybe.
a lot of men have been drawn to me recently. So it's nice. It's opened up my business to work with both sexes, which I really do enjoy.
I think I want to be careful what I say here. I think male business people are often a little bit rough around the edges. So in the best sense, it's the ultimate compliment. You know what I mean? Like they're not dealing with anyone, male or female, that they don't think is totally credible or whatever. So the fact that you've attracted that is amazing. And that's what I wanted to transition into next is like, what are these people dealing with? Is there a common theme that you're seeing? Because I think about the same type of personality that we're referring to. Well, we push until we feel like we can't. So it's not the
Mhm.
first day or first week of symptoms that they're coming to someone like you. They've probably felt bad for a while. I'm just curious if you're seeing any common themes in the symptoms. Like who are you attracting in terms of what they're dealing with?
Right. So basically, if I had to sum up what I do for clients, is I optimize energy. If like I had to explain my business, that is the main thing I do. So I have a 3-part framework and my business is called, or my program is called Lab Fit Nutrition. The framework is called Lab. You will never forget that because it's called Lab. So we start off with lifestyle reboot, acceleration is the second framework, and the third framework is balance body and mind. So generally when I jump on a call with someone, I have my intake, I'm asking questions, and I say, what clients want, the transformation, the result they want, and the result they get working with me, optimized energy, boosted brain function, and fit and resilient. And because when we have better energy, we get more stuff done in a day. We're more productive. We're nicer humans. When we don't have that foggy brain, again, we have that mental clarity. We're more creative. And fit and resilience, I mean, fit internally with systems and then fit externally. Like when we look good in our body, when we feel confident in our skin, that projects outwards. So when I talk to clients, I usually say most of my clients that come to me fall in 2 of these 3 categories, if not all 3. So the first thing is they have some form of digestive distress, whether it's gas, whether it's bloating, whether it's constipation, whatever it is, acid reflux. The second category they fall into is high stress. When you're an entrepreneur, that's like chronic stress, which can cause anxiety, which can cause burnout, which can cause energy crashes, what can cause sleep. And then the third category is weight issues, whether it's, I just say under muscled, but a lot of women don't like that term. But I think most people are just under muscled. Obviously, we can be overweight as well. But those are like the 3 categories that I kind of check off with clients. And most of the clients I'm working with, will have all 3. if not 2 out of the 3. And so to get to the transformation, the result, we follow our 3-part framework, which is lab, lifestyle, reboot, acceleration, and balanced body and mind. So it gives them a roadmap and it helps them like conceptualize and understand where we're going. Like with lifestyle reboot, the first thing we look at is customized nutrition. Like we're looking at lab data. This is data-driven programming. I want to know what your nutrition is. I don't want you just being like, I eat good. What does that mean? I want you to track your nutrition. I want to see how much you're eating, how much protein, how much fat, how much carbohydrates, how much calories. And then I want to customize that and meet you where you're at. A
Sure.
lot of the times us as health practitioners, like we know what is optimal, like get rid of gluten, stop drinking so much, but like you have to meet clients where they're at. If they're drinking 10 drinks a week, can we bring it down to 8? Can we bring it down to 6?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like you have to meet people where they're at or else they feel like it's too much work. They feel like you're not creating that lifestyle for them.
Sure.
So it's about chunking it down week by week so that they naturally transform and it feels like it happened in stages, not just like, because then it feels like a diet. If you're like,
Mhm.
okay, we have to switch everything all at once. So that's a big thing I do. Coming from the sports nutrition, coming from the bodybuilding, I'm able to create that customized nutrition program based on where you're at, based on where your goals are, based on your total daily energy expenditure. Like there's a lot of numbers and stuff all involved with this, but just so clients know where they're at. Because a lot of women are under eating. A lot of men actually are under eating too, and
Mhm.
they're under eating protein all the time. So it's like, I like to have that plan for them. And some clients will like love tracking their macros the entire time. And some I'm like, track for, 30 days, just get that habit and then you can let it go and we can reassess if this is working or not.
Yeah. I have quite a few questions for that. I have to answer this one question first, though. Ben Wilson, thanks for your patience, my friend. He said, "Hey, team, email says the 5-day training starts on the 18th. Is this something separate to the 5-day paid training?" It absolutely is. You are on a live version of the Health Detective podcast. So we do this a few times per week. This has nothing to do with the 5 and 5. I was just shouting that out in the beginning so that people know that it will be starting then. So that'll be a separate email for you that will be on the 18th. And Joe said, so true. Yeah, it absolutely is. So here's my few things for this. One, I appreciate you recognizing the under eating thing. This is something that I did not realize I was doing for the longest time. Actually, it was somewhat recently, like in the last 6 months, because it, it's not that I don't like food. Who doesn't? But what
Right.
happened is with my health issues, I ended up restricting so much stuff that it became very easy to not eat a bunch of calories. I wasn't trying to do that per se, but it's like, all right, well, you lost like 10,000 things. You're not left with a whole lot. And as I started to reintroduce those things, I felt a lot better. There's certain things that I'll never add again. I'll never eat gluten intentionally in my life,
Right.
probably. But like dairy, I've incorporated raw dairy back in, and I feel amazing off of that. It works very well with my body. And as I noticed that I started to feel better, I said, okay, I'm 6 feet. I've always had like more of an athletic build. I'd be looked at as lean, but like athletic with a shirt off. And so I was about 165 though 6 months ago, and I'm up to 182 now. And I'm like, all right, I want to hit like 195, 200 at 6'5". I think that'll be
Nice.
that's a good look. I think that's
Yeah.
okay. My fiance fully supports it, so we're just adding weight until it doesn't look good anymore. That's basically the goal right now. But I can't believe how much more energy I feel when I actually have to track the calories to make sure I'm eating enough. And
Hmm.
like you said, we're expending a lot of energy as entrepreneurial people. Like that does affect your calories as well. I, generally speaking, need to eat 3,500 plus calories a day, even at my weight, to make sure I feel my best and maintain that weight. If I go below 3,500, I'll start to lose again and I can end up back at like a 170, 165. And
Yeah.
all the daily recommendations on the back of these stupid little charts that we have says are recommended for like a 2,000 calorie diet. So my self is thinking out here, well, as long as I'm like over 2,500, that's fine. And I'm someone educated on this stuff, and I'm like, no, I can eat way more than I thought. So first thing was, do you find people are like, are there more men than more men than would have, what am I trying to say? Are there men like me? Is what I'm trying to say. Like, are they surprised by how much they might have to eat? Do you find it's common that it's like 3,500 calories or something or more?
Yeah, it's it's very, very, very common. I can speak more to women because that's women I was working with for the last 5 years
Sure.
online. But like eating 800 calories, 1,000 calories, I'm like,
Scary.
but I can relate to that because that's what I did when I was like in my 20s, 1,200 calories. And it's like, they're like, oh my gosh, this is such a shock. I'm eating more food and I feel better. I'm like, what a concept, right? So when I work with women who are eating 800 calories, or actually one of my male clients, around the same height as you, you're in your late 20s, right?
I'm 28. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. He's a couple years older than you. But he was eating like I eat about 2,000 calories a day. I'm like 5'2", 120 pounds, right?
You're
And I
five.
built
So
5'2",
funny. You don't meet
120
someone in
pounds.
person. That just threw me off. That's funny.
But he was eating the same amount as me. I'm like, bro, you're like 6'1". And he was actually eating less than me. He was eating like 19 or 1,800 calories. I'm like, so what we have to do in scenarios like that, we have to reverse diet.
Mhm.
So we have to bring the calories up week by week, usually 150 to 200. For women, it's such a scary concept because they come to me, I want to lose weight. And I'm like, okay, let's track your nutrition. And I always say it's really, really, really hard to improve what you can't measure and can't
Mm.
see. We want data. Okay. So when they send me the report, some of them, I'm like, how are you surviving on like 900 calories? So we go in stages where we build up their metabolic fire to their total daily energy expenditure. So there's 4 numbers in that. Basically, like it's your basal metabolic rate. If you were to lie in bed all day, do nothing, watch some Netflix, that requires energy. And then there's non-exercise where I'm like talking and like moving my hand. This requires calories. And then there's the thermic effect of food. So something like a steak is going to require a lot more energy internally to break down than a strawberry. And then there's exercise, right? So that's how we kind of get those numbers. And then we have to base it on like your height, your weight, and your activity level. But so many women are under eating and so many men are under eating. And I think it's become more common too with fasting. People are like, oh, I got to fast more. And like, and for women too, like I teach the feminine cycle in seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall, because how boring is a follicular phase and luteal phase for the average person? There's like
So
eyes
boring.
just glaze over, right? So again, it's about teaching and explaining things to clients so they're like, okay, this makes sense. So in the 4 seasons, like winter, spring, summer, and fall, everyone will associate an emotion or a feeling with that, right? So winter is when you're bleeding. So you don't want to, cut your calories. You don't want to start, going into ketosis. You don't want to do anything really that much when your hormones are tanked. But when you're coming into spring, that's when, okay, I can play around with maybe fasting. And I don't recommend fasting until women are fat adapted, usually 4 to 6 weeks, because it's so much easier to fast when you're fat adapted, right? And then it might not be right for everyone, but working with your biology, not against it, is one of my biggest things. And for women, working with your feminine cycle is a game changer.
The fasting thing got me as well. I think that's very relatable. You're restricting foods. You're not eating, and then you're like, okay, well, no wonder I'm not eating enough. Like I don't eat at all. Like that's really the fundamental problem here. And you can get caught up in a lot of these things. And I noticed it for the first time because I've done extended fasts successfully. I've done more 24-hour ones than I can count, 48, 72, and then I attempted another 72, and I couldn't even get 36 hours in without feeling like hell. I mean, it was bad. And I said, okay, Ev, maybe we've done enough fasting for right now. Maybe you've turned over a lot of the toxicity that was stored in these fat cells, and now it's a balance of back and forth. And that's exactly what I do. I actually feel better doing less fasting than I had done for. Keep in mind, a little disclaimer for people, I was always lean and I did this for like 7 years straight. So it took a while before I got to a point
Mhm.
where I actually didn't feel good from extended fasting. And now it's more balanced, which is cool. There was some other questions I had from when we were going over, what your approach is now with people, especially these males that you seem to be attracting, like the entrepreneurial types. So you mentioned that you see a lot of them in like a deeper stage of either compensatory or exhaustive phase of HPA axis
Mhm.
dysfunction. Are you finding that there's any other commonalities on the labs, or is it kind of different for everyone else once the hormones are accounted for?
Well, actually, what's interesting is some of my clients who come to me, which is wild, is they don't really have symptoms. And they're just like, I just want to optimize. I just want to
Okay.
know what's going on inside my body. And the interesting thing, 2 of my last clients, the metabolic chaos scorecard, it was
Yes.
like so low. It was like 100. I'm like, okay, is there anything happening in your body? Do you have brain fog? Do you have energy crashes? He's like, no, Marge, I'm good. I'm 36. I have 2 kids. Like, I just kind of want to see where I'm at, just, as prevention. I got his GI map back. I'm like, is this the right person? Like, is this the right person? He had H. pylori with 3 valeriance factors. He had candida. He had parasites. He had so much bad bacteria. And I'm like, you don't have any symptoms? He's like, no. So I don't know if it's a male thing that males are like more disconnected from their body. And it's that mental toughness where they're like pushing through things that everything that came up on his GI map and on his HTMA was low. Like everything was 4 low. So it's interesting that sometimes, like, I just onboarded a new client yesterday, and his metabolic chaos was like really low too. So I'm wondering again what the lab data is going to see, and if they're just not having these connections with their body, and they've just become so accustomed to just trucking along and being successful, and they don't have any of these signals, which is just wild to me.
I think, I mean, it's probably different for everyone, but
Yeah.
I think you're on the mark when you say there's a disconnect. It's still a thing that I continue to experience more and more of, but it didn't even happen intentionally. It was just something by studying health and really focusing on the things I was dealing with that I eventually became more aware that I can see, oh, okay, Evan, this makes me tired. When I stay up to this time, this doesn't work well. But what I would add to that is I think at the same time, whether it's conscious or subconscious, or maybe they just don't want to admit it, I have no idea. If
Hmm.
people don't spend money because they're bored, right? I mean, you
Hmm.
might spend something at the grocery store because you're bored or like clothes. I get that. They're not going to spend multiple thousands of dollars on high level consulting and labs typically because they're bored. So
Hmm.
I would almost wonder, like, do they know something? Again, the word optimize, like, what does that mean? Like, they have to feel something that they believe can be bettered by doing these things. And that's largely true. I mean, if you're walking around and you think you feel good, but you got a gut full of parasites and H. pylori, almost no doubt if we work on that a little bit, you're probably going to feel better than you did before. And I guess this is where kind of the biohacky side comes into your bio. Like, there's people that you're attracting that, again, whether real or imagined, who knows, they genuinely believe, hey, no, I'm doing pretty well, probably better than 90% of people, but I want to know how I can get that extra edge. That's kind of
Yeah.
what it is. All
Yeah.
right. And so, what are your strategies for that outside of the labs? Because I feel like you're someone that probably has multiple things for that. So, what are some tips that you give these people that want to perform at a higher level? And I'm totally not asking for free coaching here.
Well, yeah, it comes with it comes with the coaching, right? It's like meeting clients where they're at and seeing, like, we have external stuff we have to do every day. Like, we gotta, pay our bills, we gotta pay our mortgage, we gotta go to work, we gotta serve clients, we gotta take care of kids, whatever is on your plate. But I always say, like, Beyonce has 24 hours in the day. So it's like what you value and what is important to you, you'll make time for. So it's about just looking at their schedule and, like, okay, I feel like meditation is one of the things for a lot of people that gets like pushed to the back burner. It's like, oh, I'll just go, rip out a workout. That's good for me mentally. And that is, but at the same accord, it's like we want to regulate our nervous system. And the best way to do that is actually by breathing, taking time for yourself. Even if it's like, if you tell someone who doesn't meditate, you got to meditate for 30 minutes a day, they're going to feel like that's 30 hours. They're going to be like, I'm not doing it. Right. So again, it's meeting clients where they're at. Can you do 2 minutes? Come on, you can do 2 minutes. And then, the next day or the next week, can we chunk that up to 4, 5? And so it's really just about meeting clients where they're at. And then every single client's going to be different of what they require and what they need and how they need to be coached.
Right. Joe said, you just get used to how you feel and you think it's normal. And I totally agree with that. I think there's many people. My buddy brought this up to me when he was in college. I said, how are you guys living like this? Because I didn't go to a formal college. When I visited him, I could not believe the things that they ate, the lack of sleep, the
I know.
alcohol.
I
And he
know.
said, Ev, I mean, some people really do have more vital reserve than others. And if they hadn't been sick their whole life like myself, yeah, you probably can survive a few years of college overall okay. But the bottom line is, he said, I don't think they have any idea how good they could feel if they weren't doing what everyone's doing. He's like, Ev, they're all used to just, you take an Advil for everything or you take a Tylenol, and these numb you. Tylenol, by the way, side note, literally numbs your feelings. That's proven. So not only do you not feel the pain as much, you don't even feel the emotional side of things as much. Really scary. And so it's just kind of it's kind of crazy that most people are walking through their life not knowing how good they can feel. And I constantly wonder this too. I'm always wondering myself, like, all right, is there another 1%? Is there another 2 or 3%? I'm sure there always is. So as you are continuing on with your practice now, attracting these entrepreneurial type people, do you stick with the foundational labs? Are you studying any other types of labs right now, like specifically for performance? I'm just kind of curious if there's anything
Mm.
that's on your radar right now.
The 3 labs I run are, I run the Dutch, I run the GI map, and I run the HTMA.
Oh, interesting.
Those
Okay.
are the 3 core labs I run. Just from a price perspective, it's just a lesser investment with the 3 opposed to all 5. And I love minerals because it's such a low barrier entry. into the functional lab space is only $100. And it, like, even some of my clients who came from fat fueled and they don't want to invest in a high ticket, I've been able to run just some HTMAs with them. And they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize like I am in this four lows pattern. And again, it gives them permission. It gives them permission to slow down. And then, I'm like, just go get some blood work done. And it's like, I'm that nag saying it over and over and over again. And then when we go over their HTMA, they're like, oh my gosh, you're right, Marja, I should go get some blood work done, right? So I like that lab because it's low barrier entry. Because some of the other labs, I'm in Canada, so our dollar sucks. So, like the yeah, some of like your dollar is so much better than ours. So it's like the Dutch or the GI map comes up to like 550 Canadian, right?
Wow.
So it's not for everyone, certain people, but for the entrepreneurs and stuff, they usually don't blink an eye. They're like, yeah, just put the lab requisition in.
It's
But
an
that's like,
investment.
you can get a lot of data on there for a low barrier entry into the functional lab world.
Cool. All right. I'd love to talk about, and this doesn't even have to be once you've done FDN to be clear, because you have such a wide variety of expertise. Like you've done and studied so much over your time in the space. So I'd love to talk about like some of your coolest client transformations to the degree that you're able to share. But these are like my favorite people to pull from, or people like you, where you can go in your head and probably pick from, one out of like 50 of your favorites. So I'd love to just hear about someone that came to you like kind of feeling like they're at the end of the rope, just burnt the hell out. It's not going well. And then they worked with you and it got them to the other side. Because it's always one thing to hear our stories. We're the
Mhm.
practitioners, but it's cool for people to get to know, no, this is replicatable. You can do this with other people as well, even if it's not their full-time job.
Right. So one of the client that comes to mind, he has an online business. He is in the crypto space, which is a whole like I don't know anything about it. It's very interesting to me, but I definitely want to learn about it in the next 6 months. But he's in the crypto space, and he didn't really have anything that was really debilitating. But he's just like, I'm having these kind of lulls in the afternoon, and what worked before in my 20s doesn't work when I'm 37. So I ask questions to clients like, when did you feel your best? And a
Mhm.
lot of people that I work with, because I work with, around like 30 to 45 ish is generally the age group I work with. And a lot of people say, I just want to feel like I did in my 20s. Get me there, get me to that 20-year-old energy. So we ran those three labs, the HTMA, the GI map, and the Dutch. And basically, his minerals were in the toilet. His gut, surprisingly, like he didn't have any bad bacteria, which was good. He didn't really have a leaky gut, but he didn't have, he had the baby trees like me, and his forest was burnt down. So we repopulated with that. One of the things was the fasting. He's like, yeah, I don't eat till around 2 p.m. I just get up, I do my meditation, and then I start the biz. And I think it's just so common for people now to just want to push back their eating window. And so I'm like, can we wake up? Can we, have your water, have your lemon, whatever you like, but can we get like 30 grams of protein in the morning? And that was a game changer for him. In the first like 3 weeks, he's like, I feel so much better just by eating. I'm like, who would have thought? Right. So just with diet, there was a lot of shifts, and I actually just wrapped with him, and he filled out his metabolic chaos scorecard. I think it was approximately when we started, it was around 350, 125. I just got it yesterday. So I
Nice.
love that because we haven't done any retests yet, but again, that's just another like way we can quantify how you are progressing based on your symptoms.
Mhm.
So that's a really big win for him. He's like, I don't have the brain fog in the afternoon. I don't have those crashes. And he's like, I'm just, more productive, and I can get more stuff done in a day. They've hired out 7 people for their team. So he's like, I can delegate more, and I'm nicer because I don't have these crashes. So that was a really big win. And, he's referred me to a couple other people in the online space. So that's the best thing, right? When you just make a big impact on one client. And then again, your marketing fees are down if it's a referral, right?
Yes.
And that's just the best way to, expand your business is by providing an amazing service and getting clients those results and getting them moving the needle. And then they spread the word.
I have one more kind of big question before I get into where can people find you and stuff. It actually might have been more appropriate in the beginning, but I'm also thinking if I'm listening to this today and considering maybe reaching out to you or working with someone like you, I'd actually want to know the answer to this. So I am just curious. I think there are a variety of reasons, some genetic, some environmental, that people get a little crazy. They become the people that want to do stuff all day. I think for me, it is a mix of genetics and environmental stuff that led me to it. What created you? How did you become this badass woman that's like out there just grinding it out? Again, we're not glorifying the burnout side. That's not what we're saying, but you're still a very efficient, productive, successful entrepreneur that is now also managing the health side, which is probably one of the rarest things in entrepreneurship. So I'm curious, where did that all come from? Have you always been like this? Like, what happened?
Yeah, I think I just came out of the womb kicking and screaming. Yeah, I've been competitive since I was young. Like I started gymnastics when I was 3. I've played sports like soccer my entire life. I've always been super competitive. I kind of am a sore loser, like no one wants to lose. So that's just always been in my DNA. So it's like I'm always wanting to expand. I'm always wanting to learn, like I'm always investing in myself. And as entrepreneurs, we have to continuously be investing in ourselves to show up better for our clients and for ourselves. And things change quick, right? So, investing in yourself is the best thing you can do. And I always say that to my entrepreneurs. I'm like, invest in yourself, in your health, and that will pay it forward for the rest of your life.
That's cool. I think that's more relatable than people realize too. Because yes, there's like these crazy stories behind some of these cool entrepreneurs. I get that, but I actually, well, one, it's not even an opinion. I do know a lot of it's genetic. This is well documented in evolutionary psychology. It's kind of scary almost, the ultimatums of life that come from just how you're wired. But it's interesting to hear that from someone like you. You're like, no, I've always been like this, and the reason I think that's important to know is because that's very relatable. And Maddie knows this. I talk to her about this all the time. My fiance is like, I have so many acquaintances. I have so many friends, and I feel often extremely isolated in this desire to let's go. Like, let's go all day. Oh, when we're hanging out on the weekends, like I want to be talking about the ideas. Now, that's not to suggest no rest. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I am most energized and most happy, even if it's in a recreational setting where, again, we're just going out on a Friday night or whatever, where we're talking about, all right, what are we going to go do next? Like, what's the next plan? What's that? And I kind of rubbed my neck a little bit when you brought up the competitive side. Some might say, I have my charismatic personality on the podcast, and then there's uh let's just say I'd lose my entire audience if they ever had to play a board game with me or a sport or something similar. Like, it ain't good, man. Unless we're on the same team and we win, then I'm sure we'd be best friends. But
We would be
outside
good
of
on the
that,
same team.
yes, it can get a little rough. So I think that's very relatable for people. The people that are out there like, yeah, I've always been different with this. It's not good or bad. It's just different.
Yeah,
It's nice when someone gets you, because the wrong coach working with someone like that, through really no fault of their own, not completely at least, they could just be trying to tone back someone that they're not going to be happy being fully toned back. That's not what you should be doing with these types of people. You need to literally, you need to find the perfect balance where they can maintain their health and do that, but then also do as much as they can in the meantime. That is where I have found the most happiness in my life, is maintaining my health, but I am going to squeeze out everything that I can up until that point. That's just how I want to do it.
absolutely. And that's what one of my clients said too, the one I was talking about. He's like, I don't want to perform less. I want to still operate at this high level, but I want to support my body so I can. Because
Yes.
you can't tell someone, you can't tell me, hey, when I got my labs back, it's like, okay, you're going to do nothing now. It's like, I still need to move my body and exercise and stimulate my brain, but I need to do it in a cognizant way
Mhm.
that's going to support me internally so that in 3-4 months, I can get back to my baseline and even higher.
Absolutely, my friend. Where can people find you if they listen to your description of how you got into entrepreneurship and they're like, yep, that's my woman. I want to go work with her?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Marja Chow. My website is Marja Chow. You can find me on TikTok at Marja Chow. And actually, I have another website too, labfitnutrition.com. That's where I host all my courses and my podcast and everything. So it's pretty much Marja Chow or labfitnutrition.com.
Awesome. I don't know if in your busy schedule you've ever listened to a full podcast, but I have our signature question for you that we ask every time. And that question is, if I could give you a magic wand and you could wave it and get every single person in this world to do one thing for their health. So you could force us all to start doing one thing, or you can force us all to stop doing one thing. What is the one thing that you get us to do?
Oh man, I think sleep. Sleep is so important. And I think it's like the people that I work with and what I've, I sleep is something that I still have to work on because if you're not sleeping and you're, doing 7,000 things in a day, it's like your body's not recovering. So prioritize your sleep. I know it's hard if you're a night owl like me, but prioritize your sleep and, do your best to dial it back earlier. 8:30 is probably not going to be right for everyone, but let's try to get to bed before midnight at least, okay?
Yeah, let's start with that. When Marja and I figure out how to eradicate sleep, that'll be our next podcast for you guys. Thank you so much for coming on today. It was awesome to have a full circle podcast, and I just love to see what you're doing